everything that you do is sending a message to the marketplace and to the community. The way you look, the way you appear, the way you talk, it's all sending a message. It's all part of marketing.
You guys did it. You scaled, built an actual business. And I think it's because we have that same common philosophy, which is this is about improving the lives of the people that we serve and the people they serve. That's how we word it.
The $2 million contractor is the $20 million contractor given enough time. The $20 million contractor is able to hire people who are better than he is, and he focuses on processes, he focuses on culture, he lets people have their heads and do their jobs, and he stays out of their way, and he watches the important things, but not everything.
Welcome to the $100 Million Mindset, the source for business owners who aspire to scale, grow, and reach their full potential. Whether you're aiming for 5 million, 10 million, or 100 million. Your hosts are Alan O'Niell, the Irish plumber, who scaled Abacus Plumbing and Cooling to over 100 million, and Tiptoe Todd Liles, a coach to high-performing business leaders and the owner of Service Excellence, are going to help you think bigger, act smarter, and take your business to the next level.
Hey, Alan, today I've got a good friend of mine. He's actually become a good friend over time. It's Matt Michel, and Matt's influence runs very deep in the trades. He is actually the founder of Service Roundtable and then Service Nation Alliance, of which Service Excellence was a member of for a very long time. Matt is a writer, an engineer, an entrepreneur, author of the book Contractor Stories, and a new one coming out soon, which we're not going to talk about until that time. And I know for a fact he's helped thousands of contractors scale, market their business better, and just overall become more successful. Matt, thank you so much, and welcome to the $100 Million Mindset.
Oh, it's my honor to be here.
Well, it's our honor to have you, man. I'm very pleased. Um, I was telling Alan that I feel like we've grown closer actually since you've retired, as opposed to when you were actually running the Service Nation. So I'm not sure why I waited so long to get to know you personally, but I'm glad I do now.
Okay. Well, I am as well. So
Good deal. Well, Matt, we're just going to get a little bit of your background because you actually come from an engineering background. What I don't know is how your engineering background actually led you into the residential trades. I'd like to hear that story.
okay. Well, my training was in manufacturing engineering, specifically robotics and computer-aided manufacturing. So this is significant in getting my start in the industry, but it also affected how I think about problems. See, before you automate something, you have to identify every step in the process, and then you simplify or eliminate every step you can. And you have to be cognizant of how the process will affect the overall system. So Service Nation was designed to be a system comprised of lots of subsystems and processes. Anyway, I graduated. I got a job from college. I got a job with a refrigeration equipment manufacturer. I was hired to help their automation, but they're small enough, so I also did mechanical engineering and computer programming. And then after a couple of years, Linux hired me to lead factory automation efforts across 9 different factories. And then Gary Upton recruited me from manufacturing into marketing. And by the time I left Linux, I was running marketing west of the Rockies.
Well, Matt, what was the moment you decided to create Service Roundtable, and what problem were you trying to solve when you founded that organization?
Well, I was doing work with a contractor alliance, and it sort of dawned on me that they were focused on the top 5% of contractors. And the same thing was true of all the manufacturer dealer programs. I mean, everybody's focused on helping the biggest and the best contractors,
Yeah.
who are the ones that needed the help the least, but they could afford to pay for it. No one was really focused on the small contractors who wanted to grow and needed the help because they didn't have any money. And this is the bulk of the market. Well, the internet was kind of in its infancy at this point, and so I came up with an internet-based concept, and the marginal cost of adding another contractor as a member basically was the cost of the merchant service charges. So it was, irrelevant.
Mhm.
So we came out with a self-serve internet-based concept that cost $50 a month instead of thousands of dollars per month.
Yeah,
That's great.
that's actually really, really smart
Mhm.
and serving a percentage of the people that are not being served. So eventually, this rolled over into you guys establishing Service Nation. That followed next. What gap were you trying to fill or maybe not even a gap. Why Service Nation Alliance when your focus was always in the beginning on the smaller contractor?
Well, we had to have somewhere for the smaller contractor to go, and the alliance was always in the original business plan.
Mm.
And so the concept was to take contractors who were growing, who were progressing, and were ready for a more intensive program. And that's where the alliance was to come into play and play a role. And at the time we launched it, we also had a gap in the industry. There was one of the leading alliances was purchased and rebranded, so they all but disappeared from the marketplace. And another one was purchased by a electric utility, so they all but disappeared from the marketplace for a while. So it was a prime opportunity, and we jumped at the right moment.
So, Matt, building any movement as hurdles, what were the biggest moments of doubt or resistance for you?
Money,
Mon-
money was the first challenge.
Yeah.
So Steve Saunders is a contractor who went with me to a couple of manufacturers, and we were trying to get funding from them in return for exclusivity. Didn't get anywhere. Finally, we raised the money with using the three F's: family, friends, and fools. But the majority came from some West Coast angel investors who were consulting clients of mine, and then a lot of industry angels who were contractors who were intimate with the need that was out there and had faith in my ability to deliver. If you can believe it, though, one of the objections that was raised at the time was that contractors wouldn't use email. And I remember saying, well, if they aren't, they will, and we'll be ahead of the curve.
That's great.
Alan, if you don't mind, I want to ask a few questions to Matt, specifically about Service Roundtable. Your focus there is to help small contractors. I love that. I think forever the price point was $50 a month. Is it still that price point?
I believe they have changed it once I left.
Oh, well, hopefully it's still at a low price point. But I'm going to talk about the time when you were there because I'll just tell you, one of the things that we did was we rolled out a group for small contractors as well. The difference is that we were really trying to offer premium live coaching and consulting, which meant our price point model was substantially higher. And it's loaded up with a massive amount of quality. Yet, I'll be frank with you, our retention isn't as great as I wish it was. So I'm selfishly asking you, what you guys did to keep your retention high, or maybe you did struggle with retention. I don't know. So talk to me about retention when it came to your contractors in the service roundtable. And what did you guys
Retention's
do?
always an
What you
issue.
struggle with? All those things.
Yeah, retention's always an issue. I can't tell you how many times we had somebody come in to visit us and said, well, and our board did this every meeting. Well, if you would just solve the problem of people leaving, you would grow like crazy.
That's how I feel right
You're
now, man.
always going to have some churn, and we had some pretty good information or data on some of the trade associations. We knew what their churn was, and we had less than they did. So I just kind of accepted that it's part of what was out there, and we would chip away at it. One of the ways we would chip away at it was David Heimer did some analysis that showed if we could get somebody in using the tools in the first 90 days, then they were likely to stay with us for a long time. So we put a more intensive effort on that first 90 days and what we could do to help them out then. Ultimately, the retention came when we had the Roundtable Rewards program. So we had a buying group. So somebody's paying us $50 a month, and they're making multiples of that in rebates from different partners. So it made it sort of a no-brainer. But we still would lose people from time to time. So I guess there's some contractors without brains. I don't know.
Yeah, I've heard. I'm being a little selfish right now because
Oh, you may as
yeah,
well.
I'm going to learn.
Yeah.
I've heard many people say that you come for the content to a group, but then you stay for the community. Now, in Service Nation Alliance, the community is fairly obvious to me. Did you guys have like one or two key factors that you did for community in the roundtable? Um, and if so, what worked there, or and maybe even more specifically, do they actually stay for the community even if you build a community?
Sure. So what we had was the email discussion list, which I think they've done away with. Which you know no comment on that, but I think that was where a community started to form and was built. And this is contractors, they're chiefs on their own island, and all they know about what's going on in the world is when that boat pulls up with the territory manager who gives them the news that he wants them to have. And so what we did is we built bridges to other islands. So contractors were plugged in all over the country and really all over the world, and they could see what's going on with other contractors, and it really became obvious to us at some of the trade shows when these guys would start, hanging around our booth because they wanted to talk to each other as well as us. And then when we would have a hospitality party, it would be overflowing into the hall.
Mm.
And that eventually led us to start our own meetings, which was never part of the original business plan, never something I wanted to do. I don't like being in the event business. It's hard to make money at it and do it right and do it well, and it just chews up overhead. But that's what we had to do for our members because they were asking for it.
Golly, it's like all these things that you're saying, Matt. When we're sitting around, the guys are like, "Let's throw big parties and stuff." I'm like, I don't want to be in the event business. I've lived that painful life, but maybe I should just market it up as a retention cost.
Yeah, so I used to talk at an expired industry event. I would do the newcomers introduction, and I would tell them that that the way things exist is people will come because of the seminars, and it's paid for by the people that are on the show floor. So go by and stop and talk to the exhibitors, and all everybody will talk about when they go back is all of the networking that occurs in the halls and in the bars in the evening. Well, it was sort of the same way with the Service Roundtable. I think we attracted them with the content. They all they talked about was how they interacted with each other. We had a lot of people who referred to it for years as it's just a chat group. And what paid for everything, because we couldn't afford to do what we did at the price point we were at. What paid for everything was the Roundtable Rewards program and all the exhibitors and people that were members of the program.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you for letting me personally pick your brain a little bit there because I took away a whole bunch. But now we got to shift over because this is about contractors and helping them build the mindset. So, Alan, let's move into the next segment where we pick his brain on what he knows about helping contractors grow.
Yeah, there's a quote here, Matt: marketing is everything and everything is marketing. And from contractors' stories, success doesn't come from a can. It comes from hard work, belief, and the willingness to take risks. In your experience, Matt, what separates the $2 million contractor from the $20 million contractor?
you want the smart ass answer?
Yes, yes, we
18
do.
million?
He's Irish,
Yeah,
Matt. Of
yeah.
course, he wants the smart ass answer.
The $2 million contractor is the $20 million contractor given enough time.
Right.
I actually like that.
I love that. Yeah.
So actually, the difference to me is the $20 million contractor doesn't get in his own way like the $2 million contractor does, and the $20 million contractor is able to hire people who are better than he is, and he focuses on processes, he focuses on culture, he lets people have their heads and do their jobs, and he stays out of their way, and he watches the important things, but not everything. If that makes sense.
Well, that's a great answer. That's a great answer.
Just
Yeah.
freaking solid wisdom
Yeah.
right there. That's really good. What other traits are you seeing consistently in leaders at scale, Will, Matt?
Well, there are a lot of contractors who scale, but not well. That's right.
Mm.
So they scale for a year or two, and then their organizations crash, and they move into consulting, and they start telling other contractors how to replicate their temporary success for just a 4 or 5 figure, 6-figure investment. We know who they are, and they're out there. But the contractors who scale well, I think they have good character. They build sustainable cultures. They focus on the processes. They learn every day. They seek mentors and groups that will help them so that they can learn from the mistakes of others. They attend the local meetings and the national meetings. They network like crazy in the industry and in their communities, and they delegate and try to make themselves unnecessary.
That's great. Matt, just before we came into the studio here, myself and Todd were talking about contractors and their tendency to look for the next great shiny thing. And you know, I'm sure you've seen, Todd and I have had this conversation also, the amount of new gurus that have popped up in our space. Some of who have done some pretty cool things, and others who have not done much, but still they're self-appointed gurus. What advice would you give the business owner out there about hiring somebody to help them in their business, especially if it's one of these internet social media gurus?
Be very careful. And again, I think it goes back to character matters a lot. Reputation matters a lot. There are people. You're going to have to find somebody that fits you, that you can live with, that you like what they're talking about. Not everybody's a match. I mean, there's some people who are really good consultants and really good industry gurus, so to speak, but they may not be, your cup of tea or my cup of tea, but they can help somebody else.
Hmm.
And so, you just got to make sure that you click, but also don't don't get lost in the drama. Don't get lost in the hero worship, because this is fundamentally a very simple business. It's a local business,
Mhm.
and it's a business of taking care of people inside your company and outside your company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally agree. What mistakes, Matt, do you think keep good contractors from becoming great business owners?
Well, again, like I said, it's where they can't get out of their own way, and I think another thing that they do is they play small ball, and uh, great business owners are servant leaders, so they put their team first, and that means that the team puts the customers and the business first.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But the flip side is small ball. So let me give you an example. I had an employee who would expense a $2 bottle of water from the Admirals Club before every plane flight. It drove me freaking crazy. I mean, they give you free water on the plane, right?
Right.
You know, and 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 sometimes because I've flown with this employee, uh, the bottle of water may not even get opened, and I really, really had to fight my urge to slap down that $2 bottle of water because it was just $2, right? And if I did that, it would have damaged the relationship. It would have affected the employee's attitude. And this is somebody who did a great job, worked extra hours without being asked or even thinking about it. And focusing on $2 is small ball. It didn't really matter. What mattered was the employee.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It
Makes
does.
total sense. Yeah, total sense, Matt. Yeah.
You know what? I'll tell you what's fascinating about what you just said right there is that you're right, but it also brings me right back immediately to a story that I heard from the founder of Focus on the Family. And he's telling the story about his daughter taking a pen from Focus on the Family's office, and she's writing with it. It's at the house, and she's using it for personal use. This is his daughter. And he asked her, "What are you doing with that pen?" She's like, "Well, Dad, I needed a pen." And he's like, "Yes, but donors paid for that pen. That's office supplies that you took from, our givers. That's you stole tithe money." That's kind of small ball,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. But at the same token, it might have actually mattered if you were the person giving tithe money, wanting to know if it was going to people in need or if it was going to someone who was taking extra pens home. So I see your point, and I see your point, right? It's that's $2 that we could have contributed to growth of the organization, but at the same token, do you want to lose the team member over it? You got to pick and choose your battle, is what you're saying.
Well, what's important, right? Just keep the focus on what's important, what matters.
Yeah.
What matters most. And in the case that you're talking about, there's a message being sent and a lesson being taught, and that was more important than the pen.
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, I also think, Matt, had you have challenged that $2 bottle of water, you would have given that employee a story that he would have told everybody
Oh,
for the
yes.
rest of his life. Like it would
Yeah.
have become a huge thing, right? And at the end of the day, as you said, it's a $2 bottle of water.
That's
So
right. Going back to the line that you gave, Alan, about marketing is everything. Matt, what does that mean to you, and what are contractors missing about
Everything.
that?
Um, They still don't wrap their trucks, despite the fact that trucks generate at least 30,000 exposures every day. They don't put service personnel in uniforms. They don't have professionally designed graphics or invoices or advertising or websites. They try to save money with cheap CSRs or even worse today, AI CSRs. Everything that you do is sending a message to the marketplace and to the community. The way you look, the way you appear, the way you talk, it's all sending a message. It's all part of marketing. It's all part of your brand. Getting involved with the community. Contractors still fail to join a service club, a local service club. They fail to network in the community. If they aren't going to do it, go hire somebody and make that person your brand ambassador, and let that person, be in the community on your behalf. I think it's a lot of contractors who are worried today about private equity. Private equity won't do this, and you're going to run rings around private equity, and they're never even going to be aware of what's going on. Because if you're networked in, and you know these guys, you can go and talk to them. You go to a coffee shop, and four people say hi to them because they personally know them or have some connection.
Yeah.
And you cannot beat that. Okay, so
Yeah.
Alan, I want to ask him about what he said about AI for CSRs.
I was about to go there myself. Go ahead, Don.
I
Yeah.
mean, lots of people are doing this right now, and I've heard very few people speak out against it. And maybe I just feel like the guy going, they're taking jobs, but it does two things. A, it sort of breaks my heart that there's a valued position that is being underplayed. And B, I go, today I can still tell when it's AI, even good AI. I want to speak to a human. I want to talk
yeah,
to a soul, not a machine. And I know people go, "Well, you're old school. You're old school, and that's dumb." I'm not necessarily opposed to certain levels of AI being used in routing, automation, making your life easier, but I want a human interacting with me. You are an engineer, so you have the emotional side of it, but I know you've thought this through as well. Talk to us about AI and where it's going, and if you see that as a problem, replacing CSRs with AI.
you mean I'm an engineer, so I'm emotionally challenged?
You have no emotions.
Um, Look,
No, I mean, you've thought through it.
I want a highly motivated, um, personable individual on the phones. I want somebody, and I want AI to assist, right? So the person, Todd calls me up. I'm the CSR. My computer screen opens up and it here's all this information on Todd that I need to know. And it's brought to me by AI so that I can sort of have some guidance on when I'm talking to him to be more effective. But ultimately, it's me making a human connection. Now, what's missing with AI? There's no human connection, right?
Mm.
And I get all the efficiency things and everybody talking about this, and I get the after hours stuff. Um, you know, Maybe there's times when you use it after hours, but there's still some great answering services out there where you've got a human being on the phone, and I think that people, especially in service companies, in service businesses where people are under stress, they call you not because they want to chat and say how's things going. They call you because they've got a problem and
Yep.
they're concerned and they're worried and they want somebody who will make them feel better, and make them feel that their problem is about to be solved.
Hmm.
And you can I someday you'll be able to do that with AI, perhaps, but I kind of at that point we won't need CSRs, but I don't think we're there yet.
Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I still think, Matt, that there should always be an option to connect with a human if you want to. I was booking a table for a birthday celebration for my wife, and we were bringing the grandkids. And I wanted to get a table outside on the patio so that the grandkids could run around if they wanted to. But AI answered the phone. AI took me all the way through the reservation, and I was really concerned that I wasn't going to be able to ask for an outside table. And at the very end of it, the AI agent said, "Is there anything else you want us to know about this reservation?" And I said, I'd like to have an outside table. But had that have been a human, I could have got that out of the way like immediately. And it was a little bit frustrating to me. It's almost everyone you call now, it's an AI agent. And I can't even remember who it was I called recently, But I said, "Is this an AI agent or a person?" And she's laughed and said, "No, this is a real person," because she sounded a bit robotic. So I think it will get frustrating as we go forward. But I think a service organization should always have the option
Yes.
to connect with a human if that's what you want.
I mean, think of the differentiation you could have. You can part of your marketing can be humans answer our phones.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Which seems crazy, but it's true, right? Yeah.
It really does. And the other thing that goes through my brain is that options. Like, I want humans to be there. I always, as soon as I can, go, let me talk to a human. Just like the
Right.
first thing. I don't want to talk to your chatbot. I want to actually talk to a human. And if I'm being fair, a lot of the reasons for that is that even with the most advanced models of AI, they're good to a point, and then they just start losing the sense of what's going on. By the way, Matt, I don't know if you've done this. I don't know if you've done this for the listener. One day, open up ChatGPT, especially if you have the paid version, and get into a serious conversation with it. I use AI all the time. I'm not anti-AI. I use it for organization, for many, many things. But get into a serious conversation with it about, will AI ever replace the human aspect of humanity? It is amazingly insightful how well it knows its limitations. And essentially, the limitations end at the artistic, emotional creation. It knows that it can only at best copy. So there is something, and maybe AGI one day might be able to do what humans can do, but AI in its most advanced model right now, at the end of the day, is never going to have a real human connection because it just can't. It may mimic something to you, but it literally cannot have a real human connection.
No, AI is supposed to serve people, not replace people.
There you go with that.
Love that line, Matt. Yeah. Matt, you often say make the customer the hero. What does that look like in execution for you?
So when we would hire someone at Service Nation, I was always the last interview, unless it was somebody that I was personally recruiting. So I didn't want to talk to someone until everybody else had signed off, and then I'd be the final gut check. But I also took it as this was my opportunity to impress the person with our culture. So I would tell the contractor, I tell the candidate, um, we serve contractors, and for us, this is a calling. These are the people that keep the lights on at night. They make sure our homes and businesses are cool in the summer, they're warm in the winter, make sure our showers are hot and our toilets flush. They're essential and they're important. And too many of them live lives of sustenance when they should be living lives of prosperity. They should be rewarded for what they do.
Mm.
Now, they may have been through trade school, but there is no owner school. So they know how to turn a wrench, but not necessarily how to turn a profit. And that's where we come in. We help contractors succeed. And when we do that, we change their lives. We change the lives of the contractors and their families. We change the lives of their employees and their families. We help make their communities better. So why our mission is to help contractors improve their business and financial performance, leading to a profitable exit strategy. It's not just words on a paper. To us, it truly is a mission, and it's a mission that you have to buy into if you want to work here. That's how I would do it.
I
That's
like it.
great.
Yeah, very good. We share a very common mission as well, Matt, and I appreciate that. I'll tell you one of the kindest compliments that I got about what we do actually came from you when we were sitting at lunch and you said that we've done what very few have done. You guys did it. You scaled, built an actual business, not just a one-off. And I think it's because we have that same common philosophy, which is this is about improving the lives of the people that we serve and the people they serve. That's how we word it. But I agree with you. You like to write blogs, articles, books, and you're very good at it. Let's go to Contractor Stories, which everybody should get a copy of it. We'll make sure that we drop a link in the show notes so that they can go grab a copy if it's wherever it's available. I'm sure we can get on Amazon, all the places. I got my copy from you. So thank you for that. In your opinion, knowing that the $100 million mindset isn't about achieving 100 million, it's actually about becoming the best version of yourself and bringing the business to the best version of your business that it can be. Not every business is in a market to do 100 million. Maybe that's 20. So with that in mind, which story do you think would be the one that the $100 million mindset audience should go read first in Contractor Stories?
Well, actually, I'd give you two.
Okay.
One of them, go ahead and read first the book about the cup of coffee. I think that's the first chapter because it's about attitude. and attitude is everything. And then the one that's called a can of success, it's all about confidence. And too many guys get held up because they don't think they can do something when they really can. So I think those two, with the right attitude and confidence, you can accomplish just about anything.
Great.
That's great, man. Matt, as you look ahead, what kind of companies are poised to win big in the next decade, do you think?
Companies that are flexible and that are committed to learning. Now, we talked about AI. What's AI going to do? I don't know.
Hmm.
I do know that it presents opportunities for contractors, and I know it also presents threats. So you got to stay on top of it. You have to keep learning. Don't forget the tried and true. Don't forget culture. Don't forget networking. Don't forget continual learning. Don't stop trying things.
That's awesome.
I love that. Can I just follow up on
Please.
that? Matt, it's funny you said don't forget the tried and true. And one of my philosophies over the years as I built Abacus was always, hey, if we're running into problems, let's get back to the basics.
Mhm.
Like let's make sure we're doing what got us where we are. As we interviewed people like Paul Kelly from Parker and Sons and Jonathan Bancroft from North Carolina, Jonathan said, keep it simple, stick to the basics. You said go back to the tried and true. Do you think that sometimes contractors just forget what got them to where they are and don't, try to get fancy and forget the basics and just don't stick to the principles that made them great in the first place?
Sure. Bright, shiny object syndrome. You talked about it earlier.
Earlier, yeah, yeah.
I tend to get distracted by the latest, greatest fad that's coming through the industry. And these things are, to give you an example, blower doors. Blower doors can work, they can be effective, they're just a tool. But there was a point in time where, man, this will solve all my problems. And there are a lot of blower doors sitting in the back of contractor shops today that haven't been used in 10 or 20 years. People bought it for the wrong reasons. Buy it for the right reasons, it can be an effective tool for you.
Right.
So I think that's kind of what you're talking about. I also think it's an example of this. We talked about marketing. There's so much focus today on digital marketing and everything digital, and they tend to ignore all the other kinds of marketing. They tend to ignore that direct mail can still work, has less competition now than it used to have.
Yeah.
And everything gets hung up on digital, which is crowded. And this is another area where the individual or the independent contractor can run rings around private equity, because private equity is all focused on digital and led by some 20-something who doesn't even know that there's a thing called mail.
Right.
That's 100% the case. Before we move into the next segment, because we're talking about shiny object and other things, I know you know what the Dunning-Kruger effect is. Well, at least I assume you do. You okay?
Go. I'm
Maybe
thinking.
it's even the Kruger-Dunning effect. But I think I'll give you the short version of it. Is that if you look at this graph that goes like this, on this side is the line of confidence, and on this side is the line of experience. So confidence, experience. And the Dunning-Kruger effect says that when you first get started at something, you gain confidence at just a tremendously rapid pace. You go right up to the top, and the experience is still extraordinarily limited, but you think you know everything. Now, this applies to shiny object syndrome, I believe. People think they know everything. So they were doing some things well. They push the things that were working over the cliff. But what happens is once they get their butt handed to them, their confidence drops very rapidly, and they go into a valley of despair. And they'll often get stuck in that valley of despair for extremely long periods of time. And it's those who go, okay, that was dumb. I've learned my lesson, and now I will slowly gain confidence as I gain experience, are the ones that actually end up doing the basics, gaining wisdom, and truly have something to share in the long run. But a lot of people get stuck in that constant up and down, and they're overly confident, valley of despair, overly confident, valley of despair, because they never actually stay consistent long enough to gain the wisdom. We call it shiny object syndrome, but to me, it's the Dunning-Kruger effect. They are so overly confident in something new, they just absolutely believe it's going to work.
Mhm.
They get rid of the stuff that does work, and they don't even give it a chance to take hold, and they're just constantly up and down into this exuberation and despair, pop, 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 pop. So when you guys are saying that, that's what's going through my brain, is that people just don't really understand that sometimes the problem, and actually don't want to hold the contractor accountable for this. I need to hold myself and companies like us accountable for this. I don't think we do a good enough job telling them, like, hey, these 6 basics that you're working on, you actually have to commit to that for years.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot stop doing that. Oh, but your technician doesn't write the checks. Your technician doesn't create the vision. Your technician is your technician. Why are you letting your technician tell you what to do in your business? Oh, but my service manager, listening to your technicians.
Yeah.
Stick with what works. Stick with what's true. It will take hold.
Well, I think another aspect of this is don't look for shortcuts.
Yeah.
There are no shortcuts. What's the old line from Tolkien? Shortcuts make for long delays.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that.
Love it. Love it.
Let's move into freedom and wealth, because part of the $100 million mindset is not just making it, but it'd be nice to keep some of it. And you and I have had some good conversations about it, and you've said that wealth is freedom, and freedom is the ability to choose how you spend your time. So after decades of impact and also accruing wealth, how do you think about preserving your personal wealth today?
Well, first, it's hard to adjust to wealth. And to give you an example, I still think twice about taking the toll lane on the highway. And if I'm not in a hurry, I can't make myself do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that that's ever going to change, but I mean, I just can't do that. But from an investment standpoint, I'm not really risk averse. In business, I always would run sensitivity analysis on the company. So every quarter, I'd run a sensitivity analysis. What's the worst thing that could happen? Could the business handle that? If not, I would take steps to correct that. I do the same thing for investments. So that makes me a little bit more sanguine about the market. My financial advisor, he said something one time that really impacted me. He said, "You've invested in all these great companies, and really you've invested in America. So if your portfolio goes down, it's because the country went down. It's because America went down. So I'm not too worried about it, whether the market goes up or down. I don't get too excited about it. Uh, I'm diversified. I'm invested in our nation. I can handle I guess I've got enough wealth that I can handle losing a lot of it if it happened, and rebuild.
Got it. I
Yeah.
think that's a very healthy perspective.
Yeah. I've never heard it put like that before, Matt, but I think it's a great philosophy that you're invested in America. Like it would take a lot for America to fold, right? I mean, it's not going to happen. So I think it's a great way to look at it, actually.
Yeah,
Um, are there any habits or disciplines that help you stay grounded in this phase of wealth preservation, Matt?
well,
Apart from not taking the toll road.
well, there's nothing that keeps you grounded like having a wife and children. But
That's true. That's true.
it's funny. I can be aggressive in business, and I've lived with substantial business risk from time to time. But personally, I've been pretty conservative. So being grounded isn't my problem. My problem is recognizing that wealth needs to be used and enjoyed. So I've got a wealthy friend of mine that we travel together to some board meetings at A&M, and he keeps telling me, if you don't fly first class, your kids will. And so that's kind of my challenge right now, is not really being grounded. It's learning how to use the wealth that I've accrued.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I suspect that's why you will have plenty of wealth your entire life and will pass some on. Um, and I do agree with your friend. You should enjoy your wealth. That's why you have it. Um, but also, I think there's a healthy balance there. We've seen people that blow through their money in a hurry. $50 million is gone. You're like, how do they do that?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's important. Let's talk about legacy. And I know some people don't like that term. So think about it as your future, if you will. You've already built
Well,
several great things. Is there anything that you're building now that you're excited about for the future?
Well, let's take the term legacy for a second. Um, any legacy is in your family. There is no legacy in this industry. There is no legacy in HVAC. I mean, I stepped down from Service Nation less than 3 years ago, and I'm already fading a faded memory. All right, and it's not bad. It's just the way it is. I mean, who remembers Doc Rust or John Keeler or Jeff Forker? At one point, these are some of the biggest names in the industry. Only old guys like me remember them. So, all that said, I'm still building. Look in your backyard. Everything you see is either growing or dying. Same thing with businesses. It's the same thing with people. You're either growing or dying. And I hope I'm still growing. So right now, I'm like we talked about, I'm in the final stages of a book on the emotional side of selling a business that I'm working on with Brandon Jacob. We've interviewed nearly 100 different business owners, as well as some M&A advisors, investment bankers, and some private equity guys, uh, dozens of different industries. And there's really nothing comparable to this work on the market right now. I think it's going to be an important book. It helps people deal with the emotional roller coaster that comes with selling a business. And I'm we're going to push that over the goal line later this summer. I'm continuing to write. I write for the trade magazines. I continue to do some motivational speaking. As soon as I can get back on a plane, I'll probably do some more. In January, all of my competitive restrictions expire, so there will be more options available then.
I wonder if that's making them nervous.
Matt, the book you wrote with Brandon, and Brandon did some work with me before I sold Abacus or took a partner on an Abacus in 2012. But um, I'm sure you heard a very wide range of stories from contractors. I find it fascinating, the mindset of a contractor before and after he sells a business. What was the craziest thing you heard as you interviewed people? I mean, obviously you don't probably want to put a name to it, but what was the craziest thing you heard as you did those interviews?
Um, we've heard lots of stories. Mostly, what we've had to deal with is people when they sell their companies, they have a struggle, and it depends on the person, right? There's 100 different companies. There's 100 different stories and experiences. But we had one where there was a lawsuit in the end of it because the seller did not get the right broker to help or person to help, and didn't ascertain whether the buyer truly had the money, and the buyer didn't, and things
Mm.
got ugly and heated, and everybody lost money except the lawyers.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
there are a few of those. There's you know in terms of wild stories, I think it's mostly, you've had people that go through depressions. We had one woman who sold a multi-generational business. She had to hire a consultant to help her figure out how to introduce herself, because her whole life, the way she introduced herself was as part of this business and was
Wow.
Yeah.
associated with it. So she finally had to say, that she started this company, built it, or didn't start it, but she built this company, sold it, and now she's taking a sabbatical while she figures out what she's going to do next.
Wow.
And I know that was hard for me. I mean, I had a real struggle. One of the things I needed was a business card, because you always hand somebody a business card. When I didn't have one to hand to people, it just was uncomfortable.
Mhm.
So I got one made up. I was looking to see if I have one around here, but it's got round on one end, and I thought, hey, this looks pretty cool, and I showed it to a buddy of mine, and he looks at it and said, "Man, that looks just like a tombstone."
Oh,
Thanks.
that's terrible.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I thought so, but
yeah.
uh, uh, you know, I, I think the thing is there are people who sell their companies, and the overriding most common answer that we get on what you felt like at the sale was relief, because they've had this burden, and there's different levels of risk tolerance that people have. Apparently I have a fairly high level of risk tolerance, but there's some people that that don't. Like one guy, he sold his business. He was able to retire a $10 million note that he had personally signed on to, and that just took this weight off of his shoulders. It made his life so much better. Um, I think relief that they didn't blow it before they sold and they got out. I think that's a real common sentiment. There's a lot of people who look back on what happened to their companies after they left and feel really bad about it. They don't like the decisions that were made, but in the end, they got their money. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They,
Well,
nobody forced them to sell.
I think, Matt, I think, you know, having spoke to dozens and dozens of contractors that have sold myself, I think relief is a big component of the immediate aftermath of the sale. But I've also talked to a lot of contractors where there's been regret. And I think the regret comes when you forget about the check in the bank, right? And you
Right.
just you grieve for the um I don't know whether the right word is the importance of being a
Mhm.
business owner or whether it's the purpose of being a business owner. But what's your experience been in that aspect?
Well, it's critically important to find a purpose, and that's one of the things that we got into quite a bit with people, and they grieve about what happened, from the sense that it's like watching your daughter go down the aisle and get married, and now she's going off with some strange guy, and is going to live a life without you,
Mhm.
and that's difficult, and you have to accept that. I think that's kind of one of the analogies that came up during this, and that made a lot of sense to me. Um, I, it is, it is hard to walk away, and it is hard to not be in control, and I don't know whether it's harder for guys who stay on. Uh, it seems that the average is less than 2 years for business owners who sell to stay on. And again, we're talking over 40 different industries.
Right.
I mean, including healthcare, including farming. I mean, I think it's hard for that because they no longer are in control of the decisions, and they've got to, they've been self-employed so long they're unemployable and they just
Mhm.
haven't realized it yet. Um, I think all that comes into play. Um, we're still going through it. We're still tying up a couple of loose ends on it, but I it breaks down to there's motives to sell, and they vary across. There's about 9 or 10 different ones that we've come up with, and what is the trigger? What's the catalyst? What causes the person to just flip from one day and now it's time to sell the business? There's the process of getting to the LOI, and the LOI is actually the best day in the whole process because there's none of the pain and there's all of you imagine all the wealth coming in and what you can do with it. So you've got yet to go through due diligence. Then there's going through the whole process to get to close, and then there's life after the close. And for some people, they stay on; others leave immediately. Most business owners stay on for at least a short period of time. We've heard, from everything from a guy who said, I cried all the way home after we closed the business and I left. Meanwhile, his wife, who was a co-partner in the business, was practically doing cheers. She was so happy.
Yeah, yeah. It's a weird dynamic, Matt. It definitely is. And I'm looking forward to the book
Me
because
too.
I think it'll be very insightful for a lot of people. Yeah.
Hey, Matt, in the book, do you guys explore that debt concept pretty deeply? Because I'm sitting here thinking to myself, what is the difference between a contractor that has many millions of dollars in debt versus the one that's looking to sell that has no debt? Their business is 100% debt free, and I'm just interested in that concept, and I'm curious if you guys explore it.
Yeah, it didn't come up a lot, and I don't think that there's a lot of the businesses we talked to. There were a couple of them that had personal notes that the owner had signed, but for the most part, that really wasn't that big of an issue. Um, some of them walked away with very little, and we even had a few that we've interviewed uh, that that chose not to sell in the end because it's an interesting play. I talked to a guy locally uh, just last week. We had lunch, and he sold a business in California. He moved to Texas, and he had a business in California, moved to Texas, and he hasn't sold it because it's running without him. He just shows up 4 times a year, and he monitors everything. And he's basically got a process-driven business that just throws him money. And right now, he's just enjoying spending time with his family, watching his kids grow up.
That's great.
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
No doubt. Well, Alan, I've enjoyed today.
Along with it, but I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I just seriously, that is not something that I could do. It's hard for me to stay still, and I think that's another element that's in this.
Right.
So
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
Well,
There's no doubt it's a complex thing, especially if you've spent a lot of time building a business. It's hard to let it go. And so I think, as I was preparing to sell Abacus and do the transaction, basically, I remember chatting to my wife about it, and she said to me, look, my only request, I don't care if you sell the business or don't sell the business, but my only request is to you to not have any regrets. Like, once you do it and don't look back. And I think that was really great advice looking back on it, Matt. I've never had a moment of regret. Having stepped away now, I'm just a consultant now, and I don't spend a lot of time in the business. There's times when I miss it, like absolutely I miss the buzz of being involved. I miss the excitement and the sheer elation and terror that always happens in a 60-second period, right? I mean, you go from being really happy to really freaked out. But I think it's getting your mind right before you do the transaction, and in my mind is the important thing. Like, get your mind right and then don't look back and
Absolutely.
enjoy it.
Well, there wasn't a single business owner that we talked to who said they wouldn't do it all over again.
Yeah.
I mean, none of them would give the money back.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of interesting. And they don't always stop and think about it that way. Personally, I miss the team. I miss building the team. I miss, I miss being at industry events. You think about it, in my case, I've got this network of friends that I've built over decades that are all over the country, and I won't see them if I don't go to an industry event.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Makes sense.
Well, Alan, I've enjoyed today. Matt, it's been
Absolutely.
great. Yeah,
Absolutely. Thank you, Matt, very much.
absolutely. You've offered a lot to this industry. You're still offering to this industry. We really appreciate you. And just on a personal note, you let me into the Service Roundtable and then the Service Nation Alliance at a time when a lot of people go, that's sort of competitive. And in my relationship, Alan stayed strong all the way until he left. After he left, they fired me. So, but it's all right. It's all right. It's good. So I thank you, Matt. I appreciate you personally.
Well, thank you. I appreciate both of y'all. And again, Alan, I can remember, sitting in your office talking about, went to visit you and Hallmark and the
Yeah.
Group Mac days, and trying to figure out how we're going to put together a marketing academy for everybody from industrial contractors to small residential service and contractors.
Sorry, that's my phone. It was an interesting time, Matt, for sure. The Group Mac phase, it was definitely an interesting time. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, if you've enjoyed this episode, I have, Alan. I think people should subscribe. What do you think?
Absolutely.
Think they should subscribe, Matt?
Absolutely.
All right, very fine. Thanks,
Awesome.
Matt. We'll look forward to having you on again.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Y'all take care.
Hey, thanks so much for watching the show this week. Head over to toddliles.com/mindset to get the show notes. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you never miss a new episode of the show. And if you enjoyed this episode, then share it. It really helps us get the word out. You've been watching the $100 Million Mindset with Alan O'Niell and Tiptoe Todd Liles.